What's going on, guys? It's Suk and I'm back with a brand new video on Super Duper Tech. Now in today's video I will be reviewing the 11-inch MacBook Air. I will also be having videos coming up very soon of the 13-inch MacBook Air, so do subscribe to be notified when I release that video. Without any further ado, let's hit the titles. Now the first thing that I wanted to get straight into talking about was actually how the processor and the built-in graphics along with the 4GB of dedicated RAM hold up. Now the table that you are looking at on screen right now happens to be my benchmark test. Now if you do want further information about how I conducted these tests, then go ahead and click the card on the top right hand side of the video, or the links will be found in the description section of this video. Now I was surprised to see that the actual scores that I was getting on more of the processor intensive tasks was very comparable to the likes of the 12-inch Retina MacBook. But when it comes to anything such as rendering graphics, the MacBook Air definitely does take the cake. Now I was quite shocked to see the time that was taken for this MacBook Air to export a 4K video when compared to the 12-inch Retina MacBook. Now as you can tell from the table on screen, it did take the MacBook Air around 5 minutes 20 seconds to export the same file that it took a 12-inch Retina MacBook around 3 minutes 40 seconds. Now with this MacBook Air you do get Apple's QWERTY Backlit Keyboard, which is a delight to type with, especially at night. Now just like the keyboard having a backlight, the actual Apple logo on the rear of this MacBook is also illuminated. Now the overall thickness of this 11-inch MacBook Air varies from its thinnest point of around 3mm to its thickest, which is around 17mm. It has a width of around 30cm, a depth of around 20cm, and weighs in at around 2.4 pounds. Now in terms of ports and connectivity, on the right hand side of the device you do get a single Thunderbolt 2.0 port, which is capable of transferring speeds of around 20 gigabits per second, and you also get a single USB 3.0 port. In terms of the ports found on the left hand side of the device, you do get a MagSafe 2 connector, which is obviously used to charge up this MacBook, a USB 3.0 connector, as well as a 3.5mm headphone jack. Now there are also two little holes that are for stereo microphones. Now as I earlier stated, a MagSafe 2 connector is used to charge up these MacBook Airs. Now this connector is used just in case someone happens to trip up over the wire, so that the MacBook itself doesn't go flying onto the floor and get ruined. Now when the connector is successfully connected, it turns green, and when it's charging it does turn orange. Now the next thing that I do want to get into talking about happens to be about the Facetime camera built into this MacBook Air. Now unlike the potato found in the likes of the 12-inch Retina MacBook, which shoots at 480p, the camera found in the 11-inch MacBook Air is capable of shooting at 720p HD. And here's just a few samples of what that camera can produce. Now when an application or program is running that uses the Facetime camera, a little green LED indicator light is present to the right of the camera. Now due to the way that Apple have engineered its hinges on all of its MacBooks, you are able to open up the MacBook Air just like the 12-inch Retina MacBook with only one finger. However, unlike the 12-inch Retina MacBook, the 11-inch MacBook Air does have a fan within itself. Now this fan is of course used to keep the processor within the MacBook Air running cool. Now as you can see, when the screen itself on the MacBook Air is extended, you can see the fan grills at the back of the hinge. Now bordering the edge of the screen, there is a slight little black line that goes around. Now this is slightly raised to ensure that no dust gets inside of the keyboard, and it also allows for space between the keyboard and the screen, therefore the screen will not get damaged by the keyboard. Now the next little test that I did conduct on this 11-inch MacBook Air was to see how bright the screen gets. Now what I did was increase the brightness to the maximum and test against where there is the most white light, and I got a reading of around 221 lux. The next test that I did conduct was to check how hot this MacBook Air got. Now bearing in mind that I did conduct this after performing a series of benchmark tests, which you can check the video in the top right corner to check out how that went. Now the reading that I did get from the top of the MacBook Air by the keyboard was around 24 degrees Celsius, and the reading that I did get from the bottom of this MacBook Air was around 25 degrees Celsius. Now I didn't find this temperature to be hot, considering that I had run around 7 benchmark tests and exported a 4K file. The last test that I did conduct on this MacBook Air was to check how loud the speakers get. Now I did have the volume increased to the maximum, and my decibel meter was approximately 1.5 foot away from the MacBook. And the video that I did play was my iPad Pro review video, and as you can tell, the maximum reading that I did get was around 84.8 decibels. So now I've got to the part of the video where I just want to give you my overall thoughts and opinions on this MacBook. Now the first thing that I do want to point out that is, if you are already in Apple's ecosystem, i.e. if you have an iPhone, an iPad, or even if you've got an existing MacBook, then buying any sort of MacBook, whether it's a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro, is more or less going to fit in perfectly around you. Now the reasons that I do say this is that there are features built into OS X, such as continuity or even handoff, which will just fit in perfectly for you. So who would I recommend this MacBook Air to? Well, the first type of person that I would be recommending it to is of course a student. Now the reasons as to why I suggest this, now first up, not that it's the most affordable, at least when compared to the likes of most Windows laptops, but when looking at Apple's MacBook lineup, it is considerably cheaper when compared to either a MacBook or even a MacBook Pro. Now the reasons that I do suggest this is that it's fairly good for word processing, searching the web, or even a bit of light casual gaming. So guys, that has been it for today's video. If you did enjoy the video, then go ahead and smack that like button. If you are new around here, then why don't you go down below and hit the subscribe button to be notified whenever I upload my next video. I'll let you guys in on a little secret. My next video is actually going to be whether you can game on a Mac Mini. So if you're interested in seeing that video, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and follow me over on Twitter if you've got any questions as to any of my videos. Twitter is the first place that you should be looking at going to ask me a question, as I'm more vocal over on Twitter than mostly anything else. Add me up on Periscope to see live behind the scenes videos of when I'm recording or when I'm editing or anything else. Go ahead and add me up on Snapchat to see what goes on day to day behind the scenes. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good one.